Ciao everyone and welcome back to another episode of Learn Italian with Songs. Today we are going to talk about actually a French song, La Bohème by Aznavour. Uh, because actually this song, the original version at least is in French, but it has also an Italian and an English versions because one in Italian and one in English. So pretty much the whole concept would be, but is the Italian version similar and to the original one? And if yes, how much? Because we saw it already with the song by Annalisa, Sinceramente, that was not really translated, but has a version in French and one in Spanish. You can't really translate literally because, of course, the construction of the sentences changes according to the language. Hello, chat. How's it going? And the issue, of course, is to keep the same meaning, mainly when we are talking about a story that has a specific purpose. And La Bohème is about this. Why? First of all, because we can't really translate it. Because La Bohème is a French concept. So by translating this word, we would lose a bit the meaning. And so it is better to explain what it is. First of all, this is a song that is a bit vintage, if you will, because it was released in 1965. So, yeah, it has basically 60 years. It is basically 60 years old. And I found a statement by the author, by the artist, who described La Bohème, so the concept, but also the song, as like this way. It's about unconsciousness, as in recklessness, because French and Italian has this thing that incosciente or generally incoscienza or unconscious technically is unconsciousness, but as in without mind, so reckless. And total freedom, a moment when you can invent yourself artistically, but also build yourself in relation to others. It's thus a song that deals with the bohemian lifestyle, which is the core concept of the song, a carefree artistic life in poverty. Because La Bohème, or the bohemian lifestyle, is art associated to poverty, so a little bit glorification of poverty and living in difficulty. So, specifically, what is bohemianism? Because La Bohème is not only a lifestyle, but it was an artistic movement, if you will. So, bohemianism is a social and cultural movement that has at its core a way of life away from society's conventional norms and expectations. The term originates from the French bohème and spread to the English-speaking world as well. So technically it doesn't really have a translation, as I was explaining. It is more of a loan word. It was used to describe mid-19th century non-traditional lifestyles, especially of artists, writers, journalists, musicians, and actors in major European cities. So, of course, Paris, top of the top. And it focused on poverty, hunger, appreciation of friendship, idealization of art, and contempt of money. So this is a bit what La Bohème and bohemianism is. But what are we going to find in this song concerning this concept and the social and cultural movement? Well, we are going to find a story that expresses and paints and evokes all the core values of this movement. So, the point of the artist is to explain la bohème as a lifestyle and generally what la bohème is through a story. The story of a painter who's not living the best of lives, because this is la bohème. Now, as I said, this song originally was in French, is in French, still nowadays the original version is the French one, but it also has an Italian version and an English one. But there is a difference, because while the Italian version is as long as the French one and quite close to it, however, it has some differences as we are going to see in a moment, the English one is more different. Because, first of all, it's shorter. The song is divided in 4 sections, because the song is verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus 4 times. So, 4 sections, 4 macro sections divided into verse and chorus. But there is an issue, because the English version is more instrumental, so the introduction and the outro are more instrumental, and in fact the song pretty much lasts as the other versions, but it is 1 section short. Pretty much to give an idea, the second and third verses and choruses are fused into one. So we have the first verse and the first chorus, a section that fuses together, mix together what in Italian and French are the second and third verses and choruses, and then we have the final verse and the final chorus. So keep in mind that for the third chorus and the third verse, we're not going to have an official English version. Of course, I'm going to provide the translations nonetheless for all the languages, but the third verse and chorus won't have the English version, because pretty much the second verse and chorus also represent the third verse and chorus, and then of course we are going to have the fourth ones, because 2 sections. So now, without further ado, let's start, because the song is quite long. As I said in the introduction, we start with the first verse. The style is very similar to a ballad. In fact, what our artist is going to tell us is a story. The story of a painter living à la bohème. So, in Italian, he says, io vi parlo di un tempo che in questo momento non ha più valore. I'm talking to you about a time, so I'm telling you a story about a time that at this moment, in this moment, does not have value anymore. Lost its value. Vi parlo di Montmartre, dei fiori di lilla sbocciati alle finestre. I'm telling you again the story of Montmartre, about the lilac flowers blooming in the windows, at the windows. Della nostra stanza colma di speranza e di un grande amore. About our room full of hope and great love. Pittore vuole dire poco da mangiare, ma lei non pianse mai. Painter wants to say, so means little to eat, but she never cried. Now, is the Italian version good? Yes. I would say generally a little bit better than the English one, but nothing beats the French one. Why? The beginning in Italian and French is pretty much the same. Because also in French, our artist, our singer tells us, I'm telling you, I'm talking to you because io vi parlo and je vous parle. It's the same exact collocation in both languages. The same thing in same collocation in French. So just like in Italian you can say io vi parlo di un tempo, in French you can say je vous parle d'un temps. And it works. So no problem. In English, however, you can't really say that. And in fact, in English it became let me tell the story of a time. But the meaning is pretty much the same. And what is this time? This time is the time of la bohème. And he says, a time that those under 20 years old cannot know. Et les moins de 20 ans ne peuvent pas connaître. This changes a bit in Italian, because in Italian becomes the story of a moment of a time that doesn't have value anymore. In Italian is far stronger than in French, because in French, of course, he was singing in 1965, so now it would be those who have less than 8 years old cannot remember, because if in 1965 it was 20 years ago, in 2025 it is 8 years ago. Math. So we are talking about the beginning of 1900, so the 20th century. So we know, first indication, we know that la bohème is not something we can find anymore. We can find it only in tales, because the time of la bohème is gone. And that's why our artist is telling us the story of what it used to be to live à la bohémienne. So, as I was saying, in French, it is like if you have less than 20 years old, you weren't even born, you can't remember that lifestyle. But in Italian, it's much stronger, because that time has no value anymore. It's completely gone. And in English, it is a little bit different, because a time when the world was in rhyme with sound of our laughter. So, to be fair, we have the French version that is like neutral, so a time that passed. In Italian is much more negative. In English is much more romantic. So let's say that the French is the middle way between the Italian and the English version. But then in the second line, pretty much the concept is the same. So we're talking about not only a time, but also a place, Montmartre, which is a block, a zone of Paris, where you can find a very famous church, which is on a hill. And this church gives the name to the whole zone, because is the main point of the whole zone. And what did we have in this neighborhood, in this block? We had these lilac flowers. They are simply called lilas in French and fiori di lilla in Italian. In Italian, you can also call them simply lilas, just like in French, because I think we loaned the word and modified it a little bit from French. Now, it is funny because we are talking about the same place in all versions, but while in Italian and French, we have the description and the image of these flowers blooming or being hung at the windows. In English is a little bit different because yes, we have the hanged flowers because the lilac can be in the pots, but you can also grow them, if I remember correctly, like the ivy. So I don't know which of the two, but basically there was these flowers decorating that zone of Paris. In English, we have something more. Because in English, those far forgotten hours of hunger and of love. So, while in French and Italian, we know where we are, we know that we have the picture of these specific flowers. In English, however, we have the flowers, but we don't know exactly which ones they are. But we know that this place and that time are associated with hunger and love. So, two of the concepts of La Bohème, because as I was saying, it is a little bit the concept of romanticization of poverty and struggle. Because basically they were poor and they couldn't eat. That's why hunger. And then, once again, Italian and French are very similar. Because in Italian we have our room, we have hope, and we have love. In French is a little bit different and much more poetic. Because we not only have a room, we have a humble accommodation. Which is not only a room, but a nest. Le nid. A nest where we can live without much, without needing more than what we have. In Italian is more general because full of hope and a great love, our love. You will see that the Italian version is far more love story. Like at certain point concerning Italian music, I'm starting to see a pattern because apparently if in Italian we don't have the love story, somehow toxic or not, we are not happy. So I guess Charles said, the Italians like the love stories, I have to add one and focus more on that. So I noticed that the Italian version is much more focused on the love story. You'll see popping out several times in the song. While in French is more about the lifestyle, because the whole point is that they are poor, so much so that they cannot even eat, but there's love, there is art, and that's better. Because being poor, but in love and living out of your art is better than being wealthy. Trade-off, I guess. Because this is a bit the concept of La Bohème. While in English, it becomes unaware in our youth of the sobering truth of the years that came after. Very poetic, not gonna lie, but we are completely losing the whole painting, the whole image of this room. We have two different images in Italian and French, but in English it's completely lost. For some reason, probably because it didn't fit the metrics per point. And then we have the last line, which is pretty much different in the three versions, because in the original version we still have the image in mind of the zone of Paris, so Montmartre, of the flowers, of the room, and in that setting and time is where we met. Because yes, also in the French version there is the love story, but of course that we need it, because it is part of the concept of la bohème, because we need art, but we also need passion and we need love. We need to be romantic, of course. And it is funny because we have the picture of the place, of the moment, and finally the artist in French says, and here is where we met. This is how we met. Where I was crying famine, so like I was desperate and hungry, and you were posing naked, which is something that will come back in the song. And I have to say, this image, moi qui criais famine et toi qui posais nu, like if I had to give an image of what la bohème, artistically speaking, is in literature, in art, in music, I would say this. This picture, 10 out of 10, la bohème in a nutshell. In Italian, this is very poetic, very la bohème. In Italian, this image, it is a bit lost, because in Italian we have painter, pittore, probably fitting better than artista, vuol dire poco da mangiare, ma lei non pianse mai. So, what does it mean? Being a painter, an artist, it implies, it means to not have enough to eat, because you are not paid much, so you are poor, thus you can't eat. And yet, like this woman who is also a bit the personification of what la bohème, because for French people and Italian people, in our mind, it is almost automatic to think about la bohème as a woman, because we have genders. In English, this thing is a little bit lost. So when in French or in Italian you think about la bohème, you think about this decadent romantic woman, but in English it's not that immediate. And in my opinion, this woman, who is the lover of the artist, of this painter, is a little bit also the personification of la bohème. So, this personification never cries, because this whole point of poverty and difficulty and struggle and hunger, it is something positive. It is a positive value, because at least we are not wealthy, abiding to society norms. So in the end, despite all the struggle, we are the happy ones. Thus, we do not cry, because the whole point of la bohème is that the struggle is something positive. I am not going to comment from a psychological point of view or sociological point of view, because this is not the place. But the whole point of the movement is that all of these that you might say, okay, so like they are struggling is something negative. No. This is something positive. And in fact, nobody cries. No crying dans la bohème. So, in French, 10 out of 10. In Italian, losing a bit. In English is something. Because in English is we laugh at common men, because of course living à la bohemienne, like in the bohemian style, elevates us. We are not like those poor people, those common men living with normal jobs and a wage. We are superior because our lifestyle makes us superior. However, it is a little bit, I don't know, because in the Italian and the French version, this feeling of superiority is not the point, and it makes much sense because La Bohème is a lifestyle, but not really about superiority, okay? It's about being different and better in a certain way, but I don't know. And in fact, in English, for we were heroes then, and heaven smiled above. I understand the heaven smiled above because we are blessed, because pretty much this is the point. Despite all the struggle, we are the lucky ones. We are the happy ones. But about heroes, not really, because the whole point of La Bohème is the anti-hero topos, literally topos, okay? So, ranking, first place, of course, the French version, second place, the Italian one, third place, the English one. Probably he had to adapt it also to the taste of the UK musical taste, and US probably, I don't know. But the meaning changes quite a lot. And then we have the first chorus. Why am I saying the first chorus? Because in this ballad, the chorus always changes. And it always starts, each line starts with La Bohème, which of course I can't translate because La Bohème c'est la Bohème. But I can translate what is La Bohème, because pretty much the point of the choruses is to explicitly explain what bohème means. So, what is La Bohème? Let's see in the first chorus. Significava felicità, era la nostra bella età. So, in Italian, it meant happiness, significava felicità. It was our beautiful age, era la nostra bella età, because we were young, we were happy, because we were living according to the very specific lifestyle. In French is not that positive as we might understand it. Of course, always keep in mind the whole description we see here doesn't matter the language, it is always to be taken as a positive thing, because La Bohème, it's something positive, is what brings you true happiness. And in fact, even in French, La Bohème, ça voulait dire on est heureux. That meant we are happy, okay? And what else? Nous ne mangeons qu'un jour sur deux, which makes sense. We only ate every other day, so every 2 days. We ate one day yes, one day no. Poverty. We didn't eat every day, okay? So, the French is better balanced because we were happy. Why? Because we only ate every 2 days. So like one day yes, one day no. The Italian version is full on positive because we were happy because it was our beautiful age. So it is more related to being young, while in French is related to being hungry and being poor. So more bohème. No sadness, Gaso. La Bohème is positive. And in this case, the English version is closer to the French meaning, because poor hungry you, poor hungry me. See the old world that could not see. So, we were hungry, we were poor, but we could see an old world that others couldn't see. Do you feel the joy? Very post-Soviet in a certain way, but more decadent and romantic, I guess. More French, if you will. So, in this case, Italian version not enough bohemian, too happy. Then we have the second verse. So we enter in the second section in the second chapter of our story. E nei caffè vicini eravamo qualcuno che aspettava la gloria. And in the nearby cafe we were someone waiting for glory. Dei poveri, si sa, ma a dir la verità ci credevamo tanto. Poor people, as everyone knows, but to tell the truth, we believed in it a lot. Tanto che una tela poi si trasformava in un pasto caldo. So much so that a canvas then was transformed to or became a hot meal. E tutto senza un soldo. Intorno ad un camino l'inverno non c'è più. And all without a penny, without a piece of money, literally. Around a fireplace winter is no more. Now, funny that in Italian and in French there is this image of the caffè, the bar, ok? Il bar. What would be in Italian, le café in French. And we have this picture of someone having breakfast, eating, painting, doing art, making art and love, waiting for glory. Because the Italian version is basically a translation of the French one. In English is a little bit different because it becomes all those innocent hearts who imagine their arts could be casually mastered, which is a little bit different. Then we have the second line, which is pretty much the same in Italian and in French, but in French, once again, delivers better the idea of la bohème. Why? Because in French it says et bien que miséreux, which is pretty much like in Italian, so and although miserable, avec le ventre creux, with empty stomachs, because we keep going with this thing that we are not eating because we don't eat dans la bohème. Which is lost in Italian, because it is missing this part in the Italian version. But we keep maintaining the... Okay, what is the issue? It is that we have the contrast between poverty and hope. Because here... being poor is associated to like hope, because despite all the hardships we are happy and we are hopeful and we love each other despite the hardships. So our love, our heart, our art, our happiness, our everything positive is more like is more true than the others. Because if you are happy, if you make art, if you make love, but you have a stable job, you have like a good life. Your art, your love, your happiness is less authentic than ours because we are all of these despite the struggle. Now, in the Italian version, there is this opposition. But in French, it is more underlined because in the French version, you're not only poor, you are miserable with empty stomach. So stressing that point more than the Italian version. And then we have the English one, which is, I miss them, everyone, for the sense of time have run away for each and all. So the English version is a bit more nostalgic because, once again, as I was saying in the introduction, the second section and third section are condensed together. So that's why the English version is going more towards the end already, because then we are going to skip a whole section in English. And then we have pretty much the same concept in Italian without the bistro, because the bistro is more a French concept. We don't really have them in Italy because we just have the restaurants, which are... because usually the restaurants is a little bit more chic, more elevated in France. While if you want to go and eat like in a diner, I'm sorry to all the French for translating like that, you go into a bistro. In Italian would be tavola calda, but it didn't fit the metric, I guess. So, but the concept is the same. What is the concept? That we were transforming our canvas, so our painting, our art, into a hot meal, a good meal, because in Italian and French you have this expression repas chaud or pasto caldo, which gives you the idea of something warm that warms you up, so a good meal, okay? And there is, in both versions, Italian and French, this idea of getting the meal through art. So it gains more importance, okay? While in English, it's a bit different because it is, for it seems that our schemes were impossible, dreams that could never have lasted. Which is a little bit more negative because actually La Bohème is more positive. This whole section should be more about hope. But as I said, since the two central sections got condensed in the English version, it is a little bit more rushed, the song in English. And then we have the last line of the second verse. In English, in French and in Italian is pretty much the same. So it is more poetic in French, because in French is we recited verses gathering around the stove, forgetting the winter. In Italian is like without a penny, being essere senza un soldo is an idiomatic expression meaning that you are extremely poor because you don't even have a coin, okay? But the point is that we are poor, but since we are together, it is enough to be around a fireplace, in French, a stove. Fun fact, in French it has the double meaning because it is both the pan and the stove, la poêle. And it is funny because it is a little bit lost, this double meaning, because in French you have the stove, but you also have the meal because is where you cook. While in Italian it's simply the fireplace, which gives you the idea of gathering around something warm, but you lose a little bit the whole point of the meal, okay? Which is supposedly something that brings together the people. But the point is pretty much the same. We just need a warm place to gather around, and the winter, which represents, of course, the struggle, because the winter is the harshest season. And believe me when I say that in Paris it's quite cold in winter. And even this big struggle represented by the winter just goes away because we just need each other, like, of course, a warm place that we can share. And doesn't mean if we are poor, because, and here there is a little bit the how can I say, the Italian version and the Italian version and the French version complete each other, because we just need a warm place to gather around to share. And despite we are poor, we are penniless, like in Italian, we just need to recite verses, so to do poetry, to do art, and everything is gonna be alright. In French is more positive. In Italian is a little bit more negative. So for once we swapped. And of course in English, since this is the middle part which goes already towards the end, it says, "For when we woke at last, the big parade had passed and spring had gone its way." Which is funny because in the English version, instead of mentioning winter, it mentions springs. Usually winter represents struggle, while spring represents hope, represents youth, everything positive. So it's funny because there is this opposition among between the versions. Thank you, Alex, for this translation. So, we have the chorus. Once again, la bohème. What is la bohème? What does it mean? In Italian, vuol dire vivere così. It means living like this. So, everything we mentioned before. Vuol dire amare tutti e dire sì. Love everyone and say yes. Because, of course, love, free love, was also one of the values of La Bohème. And that's why the critics of this lifestyle also attack people living in that way by saying that they were sexually promiscuous. Yes. Of course, the critics saw this as something negative, while the people living according to the bohemian lifestyle saw this as something positive. Pretty much the same concept of hippie concerning this point. But the hippie were a little bit more happy. So, what does the French version say, though? Ça voulait dire tu es jolie. It used to mean you are pretty. Because not only the struggle makes you happy, it also makes you pretty. A little bit the concept of the ancient Greek poetry of the kalos kai agathos. So what is beautiful is also good, because what makes you happy also makes us beautiful, like pretty, as in physically, okay? Et nous avions tout du génie, and we all had genius. So the Italian part is more about just recalling what we said before, and it is more love-oriented. At this point, the pattern is clear and clear. While in French is about the genius, the mind, the art, because always remember that here we are talking about art. In English is more, once again, about love, because someone to care, someone to mind. We were in love, and love is blind. And I need to drink because today there is a heat wave and I am dehydrated. Even my brain is swearing. So, bless you. So, while the French version is more about being beautiful and intelligent, the Italian and the English version are more about love, which are all values of La Bohème. Is just here the artist is just referring to different perspectives. Then we have the third verse. As I said, here we don't have the English version because basically the English version would be the repetition of what I put in the second verse, because as I said, the English version is missing a section. So we're going to compare only the Italian and the French. Molto spesso accadeva che al mio cavalletto passavo la notte. Very often it happened that I spent the night at my easel. E disegnavo te che stavi lì per me per ore ed ore intere. And I used to draw you standing there for me for hours and hours whole. Because in Italian the expression is per ore ed ore intere. We can add it as like to stress the length. Usually in English you don't put it, but it was to provide the literal translation. E poi alla mattina, morti di stanchezza, ci trovava il sole. And then in the morning, dead of tiredness, the sun used to find us. E scendevamo insieme, tutti e due felici, a bere un buon caffè. And we used to both go down together, down the stairs, so go down in the street, happy to drink a good coffee. So, what does the French version says? Pretty much the same thing. Because even in the first line, even in the French version, the point is about painting, so making art the whole night. In French, the second line is more explicit because in Italian it is just like you were there and I was painting you, not specified how. But in French, we already know because he already said it. The woman, the personification of La Bohème in a certain way, was posing naked because, of course, how do you want to pose otherwise? And in fact, he says retouching, so refining the drawing of line of breast and curves of hips because the lady is posing naked. And since we were doing these all night, we were dead tired. So much so that we weren't even sleeping at all because I kept painting, you kept posing. And at a certain point, the dawn, the morning, was finding us. Of course, we were that tired. And in the French version, it is explicit in this line. In the Italian one is the line after. That after passing the whole night making art, and probably not only, we were going to take a café crème, so like sort of cappuccino, I guess. And yeah, basically there is a little swap between the French and the Italian version here because in the Italian version is the sun found us dead tired. And so, but despite that, despite being tired, we were just going down in the road to get a coffee. While in French is finally in the morning, we went to get this café crème. And despite being exhausted, very important, exhausted but delighted, we had to find each other and love life. Because why we had to be delighted? Because we had to love each other and we had to love life. So despite all the struggle, always something positive. Then we have the third chorus, and once again, what is la bohème? In Italian, aver 20 anni insieme a lei, being 20 years old with her, but non l'ho rivista proprio mai. I've never seen her truly ever again. But what about the French? Ça voulait dire on a 20 ans. Same thing. But, while the French is more general, so we were 20 years old, easy. In Italian, the passion, the love story, the romance, we were I was 20 years old with her. Love story, 10 out of 10, very important, very Italian. Like this sign, if you look in the hand, put like this, you can find a love story. Sorry. Anyway, and while in Italian, we are basically rushing towards the end because the artist says, I never seen her again, ever again. In French, it simply says, and we lived by the spirit of the time. Et nous vivions de l'air du temps. So simply, we were 20 years old and we were living according to the lifestyle of the time, so la bohème. In Italian, a little bit more tragic, a little bit more love story. Different focus, what can I say? And then we have the fourth verse, and here the English version comes back. Quando un giorno, per caso, mi trovo a passare davanti ad una casa. When one day, by chance, I find myself passing in front of a house. La casa di Montmartre. Non vedo più lì là e tutto sembra triste. The house in Montmartre. I don't see the lilacs anymore and everything seems sad. E sopra quella scala non passa più una tela. Ora tutto è nuovo. And above those stairs, not one canvas passes anymore. Now everything is new. Io sono un gran signore che muore di dolore e che non piange mai. I am a great gentleman who dies of pain and who never cries. Not bad, but the French original version is of course better. Why? Let's compare. Same incipit of this last act of the story. He went away, the years has passed, and one random day he goes for a walk and he passes in front of his old address where he was living with his lover and according to the La Bohème lifestyle. In Italian, he just says, I can see the lilacs anymore and everything seems sad. But in French, is much more poetic because he says, I no longer recognize the walls or the streets that saw my youth. Je ne reconnais plus ni les murs ni les rues qui ont vu ma jeunesse. Poetry 10 out of 10 in French. Italian is not even close. Also, I forgot the English one. Why? Because the English version is basically always nostalgic. So it was starting in advance. Because in English, for the first line, he says, now and then I returned. So like in English, for some reason, it's something that happens several times, while in French and Italian, it happens just once, and that's why it's much better, because it's that one moment you realize everything is gone. In English is now and then I return and the memories burn with a bittersweet aching. So every time he goes there, he gets nostalgic. But the whole point is that the realization that everything is gone, that happens that one time. That's why I prefer the French and at top of the top, and then the Italian translation. The Italian version, sorry. And for the second line, so when he doesn't see anymore the flowers, in English is a bit meh, because I climb the same old stairs. The stairs where the canvas are not going down back and forth anymore, but in English and in French and Italian is the next line. In English is in this one. Whatever. I climb the same old stair, but no one longer cares, and there's no one greet. So basically everything is colder. I don't know. I prefer the French version, to be honest. And in fact, now in Italian and French come the whole point of the stairs where he used to go. Because in Italian, he says, and above those stairs, there are no canvas passing anymore. So art is not there anymore. And everything is new. Because, of course, we don't like new things. That's the basics. But jokes aside, basically everything has changed. Nothing my memories are not there anymore. And in French, he says, at the top of a staircase, I look for the workshop of which nothing remains. Pretty much the same point of Italian, but in French is more poetic. Once again, like now, there was the point about the stairs. But no, in English, we have, like, we go forward. In the streets where we walked and the bars where we talked, the cafes where we talked of a world we were making. More glorious, more positive. But the whole point is that this part is the sad one. Because yes, now he's better, but he lost that lifestyle. So, I don't know. Not the same. The English version is less nostalgic in this point. And then I have to say, the Italian version of this last line is very meh. While the French one is 10 out of 10. In its new setting, like with its, like literally with the new decorations, okay? Because in French is dans son nouveau décor, Montmartre semble triste et les lilas sont mortes. Which is like, he's basically rhyming decoration with dead, referring to the flowers. So the beauty decoring Montmartre is dead and everything is sad. In Italian, it's like, yeah, I'm a great gentleman. And despite the fact that I'm dying of pain, I don't cry. Meh? It doesn't go even close to the French one, personally. And in the English version, we go full-on alcoholic, because I stand upon that hill, because as I said, Montmartre is on a hill, until I drink my fill, then I leave it all behind. Nostalgic, poetic... But the touch of alcoholism, I can't unsee it. And then we have the fourth and last chorus ending the story. So, in the end, what is la bohème? In Italian, sento una voce e penso a lei. I hear a voice and I think of her. Indietro non si torna mai. There's no going back. Again, what did I say? The Italian version is focused on the love story. in French is much more poetic because it says on était jeune, on était fou. We were young, we were crazy, a bit like a bit stupid even. Ça ne veut pas plus rien dire du tout. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It's much more stronger, the French version. It is more conceptual, more painting, okay, more poetic, the French version. While the Italian one, it is a description, in my opinion, more of a love story. So this description of La Bohème is seen more as a love story our artist is having with the personification of La Bohème. And to be fair, at certain point, I can't really be mad about it because yes, I'm seeing a pattern after analyzing so many songs in Italian, and the love story. The love story is often there, so I can't even be mad about this interpretation because I think it works. Probably Charles said, okay, the Italians love stories, so I have to transform this tale in a love story between the painter and the personification of La Bohème, and it works. Congratulations, can't even be mad about it. But what about the English one? Because we have also the conclusion of the English one. Moments of joy, moments of pain. Nothing can bring them back again. I don't know, because... okay, in the French version, we have the youth and we have the craziness. But this lifestyle doesn't mean anything anymore because it's gone, which is a bit the premise in the introduction, in the first section. In the Italian one, we have the let it go, this love story with La Bohème. In English is moments of joy, moments of pain. Like we had low moments and high moments, but no. The English version cannot convey the same concept as the French one, because the whole point of La Bohème is not that you have moments of joy and moments of pain. It is that you have moments of joy because of the moments of pain. And then, however, the conclusion is always the same. So, this is what La Bohème used to be, was, because it won't come back again. This is a lifestyle of the past, which is not coming back, that we have to live in the past. And accept it, I guess. So, in conclusion, with these beautiful bohème glasses, what is the point? The point is to describe what La Bohème is. In the French version, in the end, we have a very poetic image that almost paints a painting of what La Bohème as a lifestyle is. And that's why, in my opinion, despite the fact that the Italian version is a good version, it doesn't reach the same level. I get it. The Italian version is more represented as a relationship between the painter and La Bohème, the personification of La Bohème. And so the perspective is more of a love story, I guess, because it worked better for an Italian audience. So, chapeau to the artist. The English one is the one I didn't like. It's not that I didn't like it, but I understand that probably the English-speaking audience wasn't ready for La Bohème because La Bohème is very French. So it is a little bit more bland. It doesn't have the same pictures, the same image, the same painting punching you in the guts that the French version gives you. So the English version is a bit meh. The Italian version is a different perspective of the same concept, but the French version is absolutely the best and it is absolutely unmatched. So I think that to fully appreciate this song, you need to know and to get the nuances of the French version, because the Italian one is not that hard. In the end, it's pretty much a love story. But it is an interesting take. The English one is okay. If you don't speak Italian or French, I get it. You need the English one. Fair point. Back in the days, Charles Aznavour didn't have the internet and the translator, so understandably so, he had to do versions in other languages for different audience. But really, the French one is unmatched. Like incredible level. The Italian one is cute, nice. Like he speaks, like he sings in Italian very well. Nothing to say about it. It is very Italian because there is the whole love story point of view. So makes sense. 10 out of 10. I take it. I bring it home. No complaints. I see the point. I see the need of the audience. And yeah, that was pretty much everything I had to say about La Bohème, Italian version by Charles Aznavour. And let me know in the comments what is your favorite version, what you think of the 3 versions. That said, let me know what songs you'd like me to analyze next. Grazie everyone for watching and arrivederci.